was going to film this on Monday, yesterday, but I took a nap instead, and then today I woke up and I didn't have a voice, and this is about as good as it's gotten throughout the morning. So I guess it's the YouTube gods telling me I should have filmed yesterday. Hi, it's Tuesday. Last week was National Suicide Prevention Week. I figured that because of that, I would take today to talk about something that's affected me personally in regards to my mental health. I always try to keep it real on my YouTube channel. I try to always project my real self, and I don't like to be something I'm not, so I figured, why not just be completely honest with you guys. I know a lot of people who watch my videos know me in real life. For some of you, this isn't news. For those of you who don't know about this year I made the decision to start going to therapy. I have been dealing with depression for quite a number of years, and I have some other personal issues that I decided were best fixed by a therapist. When I was in therapy, I actually ended up being diagnosed with 3 mental illnesses. One was major depressive disorder, which I kind of saw coming. The second was post-traumatic stress disorder, and the last condition that I had was borderline personality disorder. And if you're anything like I was when I was diagnosed, you're probably wondering what the heck is borderline personality disorder. I feel like if you know borderline personality disorder, well, you're either a psychologist or you know someone who has the condition, or you are someone with the condition. But most people either only know the stereotype and the stigma surrounding someone with BPD, or they're just clueless as to what the condition actually is. Borderline personality disorder, as the name suggests, is a personality disorder. There are 3 clusters to personality disorders: cluster A, cluster B, and cluster C. It is in cluster B, and cluster B is the dramatic types of personality disorders. The reason it's called borderline personality disorder is because for a long time it was thought that people with this condition were on the border between neurosis and psychosis. And neurosis is kind of like your standard run-of-the-mill mental illnesses like OCD, whereas psychosis is conditions like schizophrenia, where you lose touch with reality. Psychiatrists are kind of moving away now from the label borderline. I mean, the condition is still called borderline personality disorder, but they are starting to realize that that's not entirely the case. As for the prognosis of someone with BPD, it's thought that it affects people more than a neurotic disorder, but not as much as psychotic disorder. So again, that would mean that generally I am not doing as well as somebody with anxiety, but I am doing better than somebody with schizophrenia. And mental illnesses are not black and white. There can be people with anxiety who are doing worse than me and have a harder time functioning, but then there also could be people with schizophrenia who are doing pretty okay. So it's not cookie cutter black and white stuff. This is just general terms. And now you're probably wondering how BPD manifests. In a nutshell, it is an inability to regulate your emotions, and it's also a fear of abandonment. There's actually 9 diagnostic criteria. In layman's terms, that just means there's 9 symptoms. You only have to meet 5 to be diagnosed, but there are 9. Number 1, frantic efforts to avoid abandonment. And when I say frantic, I mean like really out there things. Like, this could be somebody who actually, threatens to take their own life when their boyfriend breaks up with them. Like, frantic efforts, not just like trying to talk the person out of leaving. It's actual, like, kind of scary fear of abandonment. Number 2 is a pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships. This can manifest in a way called splitting, which means that one day you will see this person as like this great person, like a god almost, and you just idolize them, and then the very next day you absolutely hate them with a passion. I am kind of guilty of doing this myself. I tend to idolize people I really care about and then just see people I don't care about as much as like the scum of the earth. It is kind of difficult to have that like reality check that people are not always as good as you make them out to be, and they're not also always as bad. It's like I either see people as all good or all bad, and there's no real in between. Number 3 is an unstable self-image or sense of self. Again, this manifests in a lot of different ways. Like, some people have a hard time picking like a college major or a career, whereas other people struggle to define themselves, or, you know, one day they'll be almost narcissistic and then the very next day hate themselves. Number 4 is impulsivity in at least 2 areas. This can be things like alcohol and drug use, or reckless sex behaviors, or reckless driving, or impulsive spending. You have to have it in at least 2 areas for it to be considered a symptom. It's commonly believed that celebrities like Marilyn Monroe, hi Marilyn, and Lindsay Lohan struggle with borderline personality disorder. So if you think about Lindsay Lohan, how she's always in the news for her reckless driving or her substance abuse, it's really sad to think that she has this negative image associated with her when she actually could be suffering from a very serious mental illness. Number 5 is recurrent suicidal behaviors, gestures, or attempts. Suicidal gestures is things like cutting, burning, self-mutilation, self-harm. The reason that I decided to make this video in regards to Suicide Prevention Week is because borderline personality disorder actually has a very high risk of suicide. A lot of people with the disorder do end up taking or attempting to take their own lives. Knowing that this is my diagnosis and knowing that fact is a little bit scary. Trying to be optimistic here. Number 6, a reactivity of mood. Basically, mood swings. This is one area where I really struggle with the disorder. I could be, you know, at the top of the world one day, not even one day, 1 hour, and then within just a matter of minutes or even seconds, I am fuming and like so angry that you better avoid me, and it makes me a very unpleasant person to be around, I'm sure. Number 7, chronic feelings of emptiness. This is something I also struggle with quite a bit, is constantly feeling just empty. Number 8 is inappropriate intense anger or difficulty controlling anger. This kind of goes back to the mood swings thing. I have these 2 in conjunction, where I won't just have all these like weird mood swings, but when I'm angry it's just kind of scary. You might want to stay away from me and not bother me. And number 9 is transient stress-related paranoia or dissociation. Paranoia actually means that you're losing touch with reality. For instance, I had a boyfriend once who told me he heard gunshots one time, and so for the rest of our relationship, I lived every day in this intense self-consuming fear that he was going to be shot and killed, and I was planning what I was going to wear to his funeral and all of this stuff. And really, hearing gunshots is hearing gunshots. It doesn't really mean anything. And dissociation is something else that I deal with. For me, this is kind of a weird symptom. Occasionally, I will feel like I'm not really in my body, like I'm not in control of my life, and that I'm just kind of observing somebody else living my life for me. I remember one time I was with a friend and I started dissociating and I started referring to myself in the third person because I didn't really feel like I was myself. I felt like I was just kind of watching my life rather than living it. So, like I said, these are the 9 symptoms of BPD, but you only need to meet 5 in order to be diagnosed with the condition. You don't have to meet all 9. I also should say that a lot of these symptoms to a certain extent are pretty normal. Like, they're normal things. Just because you have an unstable self-image doesn't mean that you're borderline. Or sometimes having some impulsivity, that doesn't make you borderline. Again, you have to meet at least 5 of these criteria. I would venture to say that you probably have to meet them to an extreme. Like, I know for me, I eventually got this diagnosis because it was hindering my ability to just live my life. I could not function properly anymore, and so I needed to have an outlet like therapy in order to get through my life. And I know that people tend to have pretty negative connotations when somebody says that they have a borderline personality, and that makes me kind of sad. So I don't like to do this, but I am probably going to be deleting some rude comments if I get any. Also because I don't want somebody who's newly diagnosed with BPD to see those comments and to think negatively of themselves, because things like suicide and self-harm are such a big risk for a lot of people with the disorder. I don't want to drive anyone who happens upon this video to feel worthless, to feel like they have to self-harm or take their own lives because of what other people think. I also kind of just want to help end the stigma. I feel like we're never going to end the stigma surrounding mental illness if it continues to be this thing that we kind of are like hush-hush about. I have to be vocal about this, or else people are always going to see me as this monster or this devil person when I'm just a person like everyone else. One day, I'd like me saying that I have borderline personality disorder to garner the same reaction as somebody saying that they have arthritis. That you realize I have a serious condition and that there are some things I'm not going to be able to do the same as a normal person, and I'm going to be hindered in some ways, but you still see me as a person. You still see me as somebody who has hopes and dreams and likes and dislikes and talents and quirks and everything, and that I'm not just a diagnosis. I know a lot of people hear borderline personality disorder and they suddenly just think the worst, and they only see that diagnosis and that label, and that's something I even struggled with when I was diagnosed. Some of my symptoms I just saw as quirks for a really long time. People with personality disorders, they usually don't know that they have one if they don't have a diagnosis. They don't know that there's a problem, and I didn't. Suddenly finding out that these things are not just quirks and they actually were the signs of a mental illness was kind of odd. It was kind of off-putting. Now I'm just like, oh yeah, I have this. I'm kind of coming to terms with it, and I am able to talk about it now, and I don't think I would have been able to do that when I was newly diagnosed. I am definitely becoming a lot more comfortable in my own skin, and I just hope that I can make a difference in somebody's life. Hope you learned some things today. I'll see you on Friday. Peace out, Girl Scout.